It was early morning. I was training with Gasper behind the old school building. "I- Yeah, Issei, I'm so tired," he moaned, rubbing his eyes. "Don't give up now. We have to accomplish our dreams." I cried back, hurling another ball his way. "Issei, here's another," Azia said, handing me the next one. She had been keeping us company today. It was our usual practice, in which I threw a ball up into the air, and Gasper was supposed to suspend it in time. We had reached to the point that he could successfully pull it off once every 20 throws. It didn't sound like much, but it was a really huge improvement over when we first started. Persistence is key. Somehow, I was managing to help him get a hang of his sacred gear. I had to. Otherwise, I would never be able to accomplish my own goal. I wanted to have his time-stopping ability at my beck and call as soon as possible so I could touch the girls' bodies for as long as I pleased. I had already made an inventory of all the young ladies at school. I had worked out precise locations and times where I would stop time, and I formed a detailed schedule. It outlined when every captivating beauty would be all alone. Now, all I needed was Gasper's ability. Incidentally, the girls I had set sights on were all glamorous and famous idols at Kuo Academy. If I was going to free someone in time, I wanted to choose the one with the biggest breasts. Ever since I started training with Gasper, I found myself unable to sleep at night. I couldn't stop fantasizing over the potential. Azia and the press sleeping next to me every night was a separate matter, okay? In truth, what I wanted the most was to hug Ria's from behind and squeeze her chest. But if I did that, Azia would get angry at me. Since that incident with Akano, the press had ignored me until it was time for the club activities. She seemed to be brooding over something. I was incredibly saddened at the notion that she might genuinely hate me now. The press had seemingly returned to her usual self, but there was no denying that I wounded her deeply. I felt a sudden discomfort in my arm. It had stopped moving. By the look of it, Gasper had suspended it by mistake. I'm so sorry," he cried, collapsing to the ground. I let out a soft chuckle. "I told you not to worry about stuff like this, didn't I? It's okay, we're training here, and you still need to get a lot more experience. It's not like I love getting frozen, but you've been doing it less recently, so keep it up." I purposely kept from reprimanding Gasper to keep him from withdrawing again. Gasper, however, wore a conflicted expression. "I'm a failure as a user of a sacred gear and as a vampire. I'm always causing trouble for everyone. I wish I could control myself better. I'm just so useless." He's crying again. He and Akano were kind of alike. Both were born into two different species, yet belonged to neither. It must have been an endless source of anxiety. Perhaps they even hated themselves. The shame was so deep-rooted that it was difficult to grasp fully, but I knew enough to understand that it was a constant burden that lurked into the back of their minds. "Casper, I like you. Don't worry about it. Come at me. If you stop to think, you've already lost. It's easier for everyone, including me, to look at it that way." That was the best thing I could come up with, but it wasn't a lie. That was really how I thought. No matter what Akano or Gasper were, I had no reason to dislike either of them. Well, Gasper could be a bit faint-hearted and indecisive sometimes, but I didn't hate him. We're members of the same club, and we all belong to the Presus Familia, so show me what you got, I declared proudly. Admittedly, I couldn't think of any fancy words or witty speeches, but I would stand tall and have the confidence in who I was. If I showed any sense of unease, Gasper would lose heart too. I was a senior. I had to take the lead. Seeing this display, Gasper wiped away his tears and rose to his feet. "Issei, I'll do my best. That's the spirit. Let's do 100 more balls before class starts." Okay. Then I'll just put a paper bag over my head to calm down." "Stop. Azia will cry if she sees you like that." Azia and Gasper both stared back at me with question marks practically floating above their heads. There was no way I was letting sweet Azia see Gasper wearing a paper bag. Maybe that was overprotective of me, but I didn't care. "Do your best, Issei, Gasper." "Gasper, Your beautiful senior is cheering you on, so you have to give it your all. Right, thank you, Azia. Thus, our practice session resumed. Casper, you can do this. I'll make sure of it. And then we could freeze girls together. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder. We needed a teacher. Someone who was an expert in sacred gears and knowledgeable about dragons too. An image of a black-winged man came to mind, but I shook my head, clearing my thoughts. No way, I chided myself. He's the leader of our mortal enemies. Still, I did believe him when he claimed that he was an expert in both areas, and we would grow stronger if we had a teacher. Every member of the Occult Research Club had assembled in the club room. Let's go then, the press said to all of us. The day of the Leader Summit has finally arrived. The venue was a staff conference room in Kuo Academy's new school building. It was a holiday today, and the meeting was to be held late at night to prevent any disruptions. It sounded like each of the 3 faction representatives was already waiting in the new school building's lounge. The academy and its surroundings were currently protected by a powerful barrier, on the off chance that anyone tried to interrupt. However, that meant that no one could leave until the conference was finished. Outside the barrier, the forces of heaven, the fallen angels, and the Demon King had assembled a large number of troops around the school. According to Kiba, tensions were running high. If something was to go wrong during the summit, or if the talks were to break down, this could become the opening battlefield in a new war. I was terrified. What have we found ourselves caught in? The weight of reality still hadn't sunk in for me, but this was undoubtedly an important day, and I had to make sure I didn't slip up. We followed the Prez out of the club room when... President, everyone... A voice came from the cardboard box that we left behind in the room. Naturally, it was our shut-in vampire. Gasper, today's an important conference. We can't risk you freezing everyone with your sacred gear, understand? You'll have to stay here, Rhea said to him gently. Indeed, if we suspended someone important, the shock could throw the tenuous situation into chaos. Casper, be good, okay? Yeah, Issei. I've left my portable game console in your room, so you can have a go on that if you want, or you can eat some snacks that I left. I've also left a paper bag inside, so if you get sad, you can use that too. Okay. I nodded to Gasper one last time and followed the Prez outside. Issei, you're pretty good at taking care of people, huh? Kiba whispered to me with a slight grin. Leave it to me. I know how to handle one junior, I declared confidently in a show of courage. Truthfully though, I wasn't sure how long I could keep this up. Regardless, I wanted to do everything I can to help Gasper out. Next part. The Prez knocked on the door to the venue of the Leader Summit. Excuse me, she said, moving to turn the handle. Inside was an elegant, luxurious table specially assembled for the meeting. A number of mostly familiar faces were seated around it, each of them stern and severe. The atmosphere was tense. The room was deathly silent. I found myself swallowing involuntarily at the sight. Azia grabbed onto the hem of my shirt. I gave her hand a slight squeeze, hoping to reassure her. On the demon side were Sirzex and Leviathan. Oh, and Gravy was waiting on them, standing beside a tea trolley. On the angel side was Michael and a girl I've never seen before. Unlike Michael, she had brilliant, pure white wings. She was an incredible beauty, too. This was my first experience with the radiance of a hot angel. On the fallen angel side was Azazel, his 12 black wings fully spread, and the vanishing dragon, Vali. Azazel caught my gaze, his lips curling in an amused grin. He wasn't wearing his loose-fitting summer yukata today. Instead, he was wrapped in an elaborate black robe. That made sense. A yukata would hardly have been appropriate. Sirzex and Leviathan were both dressed in fancy attire too. My sister and her familia, Sirzex announced, introducing us to the other leaders. The Prez offered her greetings. It was she and her family that took an active stand against Kokabeel when he attacked the other day. I've read the report. Let me express my thanks once more, Michael said. The Prez bowed her head again, entirely composed. Sorry about that. Our Kokobil caused a fair bit of trouble, huh? Azazel remarked without a touch of guilt. Talk about attitude. The president's mouth twitched at this comment. Please, take a seat. At Sir Zek's urging, Grafia guided us to a set of chairs near the wall. The chairwoman was already there waiting. Rhea sat beside Sona, and I was to take the seat next, followed by Akano, Kiba, Azia, Zenobia, and Konako. When we were all ready, Sir Zex continued. Now that we're all here, let's lay out the groundwork for the summit. Everyone here is aware, I assume, of the forbidden topic, the matter of the utmost concern to us all, the fact that God no longer exists. Huh? Does the chairwoman know that? I glanced her way, but she didn't seem particularly surprised. Had the Prez, or perhaps her sister Leviathan, filled her in beforehand? Grafia also appeared unruffled. In that case, let's continue. With those words from Zazax, the leaders' summit got underway. The conference was proceeding smoothly. As such, we angels, Michael began. Indeed, that might be a better alternative. At this rate, each of our 3 factions is on a path to destruction, Sir Zax added. Well, there's really no need to worry about it, Azazel added. He would occasionally interject, causing a chill to fall over the room, but the governor of the Fallen Angels seemed to relish making things awkward. The bigwigs sure liked to talk about complicated stuff. It was all a whole lot of mumbo-jumbo to me. I hadn't been a demon for long, and my knowledge was limited, so I couldn't work out what they were all talking about. Demons, angels, fallen angels. This kind of conversation might have been interesting to them, but I couldn't follow it. Sure, I understood that it would probably be the best to try to learn as much to listening to the discussions as I could, but my brain just couldn't process it all. Seeing no other option, I glanced over at the Prez's breasts. Ah, wonderful. They were so big. I already knew how they felt, and I was dying to learn their taste. Unfortunately, taking the next step was pretty tough. Having realized I was staring at her chest, the Prez broke out into a faint smile. She took my hand, gripping it tightly. She was trembling. Was it her nerves? Given the magnitude of this meeting, that seemed to be the proper response. Even someone as strong as the sure-footed Riaz would get tense in a room like this. Her brother was watching, and she was standing before representatives from each of the 3 factions. She couldn't risk saying anything untoward. This was the kind of conference that you read in the history books. I squeezed Riaz's hand back. Prez, if this will help you, then I'm happy to do it. I'll always be at your side. Oh dear, aren't we acting all lovey-dovey with the President Issei? Akano whispered from my other side. Issei's hands fill me with courage. There's nothing more effective. Riaz replied softly. Prez, I'm honored. If it's courage you want, please take as much as you need. It was a relief to see that Riaz and Akano were getting along again. I patted my chest, relieved. Things proceeded without incident until it was the Prez's turn to speak. Well then, Riaz, I think it's time that you told us about the incident the other day. As you wish, Lord Lucifer. At Sir Zek's urging, the President Akano rose to their feet and began to recount the battle against Kokobil from the beginning to end. The representatives from each of the 3 factions listened on. Calmly and without embellishment, Riaz provided the overview of the events in question. Her hands were still trembling slightly as she spoke, betraying her apprehension. There was no telling what any of the 3 factions might do upon hearing what she had to say. No matter how fearless she might be, this situation had to be incredibly trying for her. After all, she was practically the same age as me, just a girl. At the end of her report, the leaders of the 3 factions each responded differently. Some let out a resigned sighs, others broke into troubled frowns, and a few erupted in laughter. That is everything that I, Riaz Gremory, and my familia are aware of, the Prez concluded. Good work. Please take your seat, Sir Zex instructed. Riaz was quick to do just that. You did it, Prez. Thanks, Riaz, Leviathan added cheerfully with a wink. Well then, Azazel, now that we have the whole story, I would like to hear the Governor of the Fallen Angels' opinion. At Sir Zeg's inquiry, all eyes fell on Azazel. The Fallen Angel's lips twisted in a dauntless grin as he responded. This incident was wholly the result of the actions of Kokobio, an executive in our central organization, Grigory. He acted independently of the other leaders. As such, I had the White Dragon Emperor here take care of him. Our organization has since court-martialed him and delivered his sentence. He's to be frozen in Cocytus, the lowest strata of hell, for all eternity. He's never coming out again. But you already know all that from the reports we delivered, yes? That's all that there's to it. Michael let out a sigh. That's one of the least convincing explanations I've ever heard. Am I correct in thinking that you do not seek any major upset between our groups? Yeah, I'm not interested in any more wars. That demon girl just told you what he said to me. Indeed, as Azazel pointed out, Kokobio had no end of complaints about his boss. He thought Azazel was too passive and disinterested in battle, that all that he cared about was sacred gears. Next, it was Sir Zek's turn to ask Azazel a question. I would like to ask you one thing. Why have you been gathering sacred gear users these past decades? At first, I assumed that you were amassing humans to bolster your forces. I expected them to be your soldiers in the new war on heaven and hell. Indeed, no matter how much time had passed, there was never any signs that you were preparing for hostilities. To be frank, I was quite alarmed when I heard that you had the Vanishing Dragon at your beck and call. Michael added. It seemed that he shared Sir Zek's concerns. Hearing what the two great leaders thought of him, Azazel flashed him a cheeky grin. It's all for my sacred gear research. If you're worried about it, how about I send you some of my materials? I assure you my studies aren't for warfare. I'm not interested in fighting anymore. I'm content with the world as it is. I've even urged my people not to get involved with human politics. We aren't planning on meddling in religious stuff or demon businesses. But I guess I'm the least trustworthy of all of us, eh? Indeed. I'm afraid so. Exactly. Sir Zex, Michael, and Leviathan, winking, were all in agreement there. What had he done to be considered so dubious? Azazel picked at his ears with his finger, seemingly unconcerned. I thought you two would be easier to deal with than God and your old Lucifer, but you're no better. I don't want to have to sneak around just to get a little research done, got it? Alright then. How about we make peace? That's all you've ever wanted, right? Angels and demons alike. Peace. Hold on. That's what the other two factions were after, right? Azazel's offer left the room in astonished silence after. The president and the chairwoman looked legitimately surprised. Azazel's words must have been wholly unexpected. I doubt anyone would have thought that a fallen angel would suggest such a thing. I didn't get all the nitty-gritty of it, but if one of the big bosses was willing to propose such a non-aggression agreement, then I was all for it. Am I witnessing history in the making here? Michael, though startled, smiled. Yes, I had intended to make the same offer to our demon and Grigory friends. If relations between our three groups continue as they have been, the world will suffer. This may sound strange coming from me, the leader of heaven, but those responsible for the Great War, God and the original demon kings, are long gone. It is time that we move on. Azazel burst into laughter at the Archangel's comments. Ha! That's rich. And from the mouth of the stubborn old Michael, no less. I remember when you were all God this and God that. It's true. We've suffered a terrible loss. But there is nothing to be gained by chasing after things that no longer exist. It is our duty to guide humanity. All members of the Seraphim agree on this. The most important thing for us to do is watch over the children of God, to protect them, and to guide them. Hey, you'll become a fallen angel too, if you keep saying stuff like that. But I guess you've taken over the whole system, huh? Things sound pretty lenient, way better than when we left. Much of their conversation was still beyond me, but Azazel's remark had the cadence of a higher dimension joke. The same applies for us. For demons to survive without our original demon kings, we must continue to adapt. We don't desire war. If we were to find ourselves embroiled in another conflict, that would mean the end of demonkind. Azazel nodded. Yeah, another long battle would end all three of us. Not to mention the effect it would have on human world. We could end up obliterating it. No, we can't afford another war. His attitude had been flippant and lighthearted just a moment ago, but now his tone was grave. Did you all think life would lack meaning without God? Did you think that it would be doomed to decline? Sorry to break it to you, but it hasn't. I'm alive and well right now, and so are you all. He spread his arms out wide before adding, the world keeps spinning even without God. Although they left a vague, indescribable feeling, those words resonated with me. Even if God was gone, I was still alive. Most other people didn't seem affected by the absence either. Out of all those confusing discussions that I overheard today, it was Azazel's words that resonated with me most powerfully. After that, the meeting moved on to what each faction wanted to do with their fighting forces. They covered their current military potential, how each group will respond to the others, and the future power dynamics. There was less tension than there had been during the other topics. I suppose that's about it, Sir Zach stated, all seated around the table at a tired size. The most critical portions of the summit were seemingly at an end. While only an hour had passed, it felt like forever. I was no good at this kind of thing. I much preferred to stay active. Grayfield began to serve tea, when Michael turned to me and said, now that our deliberations are proceeding favorably, and we were all on an even footing, perhaps it's time we talked about the matter of the Red Dragon Emperor? Everyone turned to me. It sure got me feeling nervous fast. I guess he remembers my request back at the shrine. I had wanted to ask him something. I glanced at Azia, reaffirming my resolve. Before we had come here today, I had checked with her in advance to make sure she was comfortable. Azia, can I ask Archangel Michael about you? I had inquired. She had initially been surprised, but agreed nonetheless. If you want to, I don't mind. I trust you, Issei. Azia had answered with a broad smile. Why did you banish Azia? All present were bewildered. Evidently, no one had expected me to ask something like that now. Sorry, everyone, but I wanted to put this to an angel for a while. Azia had been such a faithful servant to God, so why did the church throw her out? More than the fallen angels who murdered her, I felt the blame laid with the angels who had set it all into motion. I can only offer my deepest apologies, Micah responded, his tone sincere. With the Lord gone, only the system that governs divine protection, mercy, and miracle remain. It was a network designed to perform acts of God on his behalf. The Lord created the system, and it used to bestow miracles throughout the world. Every exorcism and holy object taps into that creation. That made sense. It was that system that hurt demons whenever we touched a cross or the like. Michael's explanation prompted another question for me. So, what you're saying is that once God died, something went wrong with the network? Michael nodded. To tell you the truth, the system is extremely difficult for anyone other than the Lord to control. I have been leading all the other seraphim in keeping it operating, and yet, compared to when God was alive and well, we aren't able to provide any blessings and acts of mercy as he could. Regrettably, there are only so many people whom we could save. Come to think of it, Kokubyo had said something similar, that when God was dead, a great many people crying out for salvation were left behind. Due to that, we need to ensure that the individuals who exert too strong of an influence over the system are not involved with the church. For example, some sacred gears can affect the system, such as Azia Argento's Twilight Healing. Your boosted gear and the Divine Dividing are in similar respect. So the problem with Azia's sacred gear is that it could heal demons and fallen angels? Michael nodded again. Yes, if someone in the church were to possess a sacred gear capable of healing demons and fallen angels, it would risk influencing the faith of those around them. That faith is wellspring of life for those who dwell in heaven. The Twilight Healing can influence the system, so it was vilified. As for the other individuals who might upset things, you mean the people who know the truth about God, right? Zenobia interrupted. Yes, that is correct, Zenobia. Losing you was a great blow, but if the knowledge of the Lord's demise were to spread beyond the top seraphim, that would also adversely affect the system. I'm terribly sorry. We had no other option but to banish you and Azia Argento as heretics. Michael stopped there, bowing his head to the two of them. Whoa, the big boss of the Angels is apologizing directly to Azia and Zenobia. The two of them stared back at Michael in surprise. I wouldn't have known how to react in this situation either. Zenobia, however, quickly regained composure and, with a smile, shook her head. No, Lord Michael, please don't apologize. Despite what happened, the church raised me since I was a child. I did think it was unreasonable at the time, but it helps now that I have the motive. The fact that you have been made a demon is our sin as well. It's fine. I admit I have some regrets, but my time with the church denied me many things that now fill my life with color. The other members of the congregation might be offended to hear this, but I'm happy. Zenobia, I never knew you felt that way about joining us. She might have been a bit too forward and ignorant in many of the ways of the world, but she had a good heart. Azia raised a hand to speak. Lord Michael, I'm happy too now. I met so many people who mean a great deal to me, and I'm honored to have met and spoken with you. I've always admired you. Michael appeared relieved. I'm sorry. You honor me with your forgiveness. I will leave the Rondal with you, Zenobia. Since you now belong to the family of Sir Zek's sister, I can rest confident that it won't be used for ill. Azia jumped when she realized that Zazel was staring right at her. I've also heard that one of my people tricked this girl and then killed her. That's right. She's already died once. Not only did a fallen angel slay me, but Azia too. You might have not known what was going on, but that fallen angel who admired you so much killed her in your name. I knew I had no right to call out Azazel at the summit. I had only been able to speak because of Michael's intervention. However, this was an incredibly sore subject for me. Calm down, Issei. Ria's urged from the seat beside me. Sorry, Prez. When it comes to this particular issue, I can't hold back. It's true. We fallen angels have been eliminating sacred gear users who pose a danger to us. But wouldn't any other group do the same? If you know someone's gonna be a threat in the future, you eliminate them beforehand, no? That's why you got killed. A talentless human could end up running wild with the power of the Red Dragon Emperor. And that would affect everyone, not just fallen angels. It's because one of your followers that I'm a demon, I stated. Is that a problem? At least you could say that those around you are happy about it. Azazel had a point. The Prez, Sir Zex, and the members of my familia were undoubtedly glad that I'd become a demon. And as Azazel said, there was no telling what I might have done with Drake's power if I had remained a human. Even now that I was a demon, I still couldn't control it properly. So it wasn't hard to imagine some huge disaster if I tried using my sacred gear as a human. Sure, that part's not bad. Everyone's been so nice to me, and know they treat me well, but still, even if I apologized, it's too late to change anything, Azazel remarked. So, how about I give you something to satisfy your cravings? Uh-huh. What is that supposed to mean? Let's see what the others gotta say. We're not the only ones with the power to influence the world, Mr. Invincible Dragon. Vali, let's start with you. What do you desire? Azazel inquired. Vali broke into a wide grin. So long as I fight strong opponents, I'm good. What kind of response is that? Does this guy seriously live the battle? He sounded like he would be a real nuisance to those around him. Azazel returned his attention to me. What about you, Mr. Red Dragon Emperor? That was a good question. I scratched my cheek before answering. To be honest, I don't really know. This is all pretty confusing to me. I'm just doing everything I can to look after my junior, another demon. so I don't really have many feelings about the wider world right now. That may be so, but you are one of those with the power to shape the future. A refusal could choose to make things difficult for the other leaders, and me to determine the course of action. Azazel replied, troubled. Issei Hyodo, I'll break this down for you in frightening detail. If we all go to war, you'll be forced to take part. You won't be able to sleep with Ria's Gremory. What did he just say? If we all make peace, then you won't have to fight. Your only concerns will be continuing your bloodline and working out how to pass the time in your prosperity. You could spend it making babies with Ria's Gremory every single day if you want. How's that? You follow me now? If we were to go to war, you won't be getting any sex. If we have peace, you can do it as much as you want. Which are you going to choose? For the first time, Azazel was speaking my language. At last, I understood. Peace would let me sleep with the prince as much as I wanted. Wait, am I even in the position to do that in the first place? Bah, it doesn't matter. So long as there's no war, I'll have time to work up to it. Let's give peace a chance. Yeah, peace. Nothing beats it. Except maybe sleeping with a prez. I laid my desire bare. It didn't bother me that the prez was sitting right next to me. Her face was so red that it practically given off steam. Oh boy, Issei. You realize that Sir Zex is here too, right? Kiba said. Right. The Demon King let out a light chuckle. This wasn't good. I had to hurry and come up with an excuse. Something serious. I'm pretty stupid. And like 90% of what you all been saying here has gone right over my head. But what I mean is, if the power I possess is really that strong, then I'll use it to help my friends, the Prez, Azia, Akeno, and the other members too. Whenever they're in trouble, I'll protect them. I mean, I'm pretty weak, but I'll still do everything I can. Even if it means risking my own life, I'll stick by their sides until... As I was giving voice to my feelings, a familiar sensation struck me. My whole body stopped. Yeah, this was what happened whenever Gasper used his time-stopping ability. When I returned to my senses, the staff meeting room was ever so slightly different. Michael was staring out the window, and Sir Zex and Gravia looked to be discussing something important. The Red Dragon Emperor is back, Azazel observed. What happened? Glancing around, I realized the room was divided into those still frozen and others who weren't. Sir Zex, Leviathan, Gravia, Michael, Azazel, and the Vanishing Dragon looked okay. As for our club members, the only members of my familia able to move are myself, Issei, Yuto, and Zenobia. Perez, thank goodness she's alright. On the other hand, Azia, Konako, and the chairwoman were all frozen. Even Akeno had been suspended. It would appear that you recovered quickly, thanks to the power of the Red Dragon Emperor. Yuto and his Holy Demon Sword and Zenobia invoked her Durandal just before it happened. Just as the press explained, Zenobia was wielding her Holy Sword, complete with this incredibly dangerous aura. It looked like she was in the middle of deactivating the weapon and returned it to the alternate dimension where she stowed it. My body had learned to recognize the approach of time freezing. Something told me that I might be able to use my Durandal as a shield to protect myself. And I was right, Zenobia stated. Hold on. She can instinctively recognize the time-stopping ability? Her physical specs were terrifying. Fine, but... Perez, what happened? It looks like... a terrorist attack, Azazel interjected. A what? I thought... Hold on. I thought, dumbfounded, in the middle of an important summit, on which the future of the whole world is at stake? Why don't you look outside? Azazel gestured to the window with his chin. I stepped towards the glass and saw... What? Sudden flashes of light were spreading out before my eyes. Huh? What's going on? The school building felt like it was shaking too. We're under fire. No matter when or where, there are always those who oppose peace. Those who will do anything to interfere with progress. Aziza pointed outside. Peering around, I spied many humanoid figures floating through the air over the school grounds. On closer inspection, they were dressed in black, sorcerer-like robes. Fire magic bullet-like attacks our way. Fortunately, their attacks didn't seem to be reaching the new school building. That said, their barrage showed no sign of stopping. So they were the terrorists? And our target had to be the leader's summit? Before I realized it, Aziza was standing beside me, his lips twisted in a wry grin. They must be those so-called magicians. They use a kind of magic developed by Sorcerer Merlin, who studied demonic powers. Based on their show of strength, I'm guessing they're each on a level of a mid-ranking demon. Every single one of those guys is stronger than me. How is that fair? Basically, they're humans armed with similar skills to you demons. Of course, they also have a few tricks that would be possible for your kind too. There's nothing worse than a human armed with a sacred gear who picks up a bit of magic. Thankfully, they got no hope of reaching us in here. Sir Zex, Michael, and I erected the strongest barrier imaginable around the school. Unfortunately, it's also something of a prison at this point. The governor of the Fallen Angels sure was a wellspring of information. That was probably to be expected of a guy on top, but he also had a way of breaking it down into easily digestible chunks for people like me. Then, why did a time-stopping attack hit us just now? Most likely, they used a sacred gear or some magic trick to transfer the power of the half-breed vampire kid and make his sacred gear go into his balance breaker mode. It's likely temporary, but to think that it could reach us in here, where he can't even see us. What remarkable potential. Still, it wasn't enough to stop us at the top of the ladder. Seriously? So those magic freaks kidnapped Gasper from his room in the old school building and they were using his ability? But how did they transfer power into him? Are there things like my boosted gear that could do that? The boosted gear combines an almost inexhaustible doubling ability with a function to transfer power. There are other standalone strength boosting and power swapping sacred gears out there too. Longinuses are unique in that they combine two functions. It's that fusion of abilities that don't normally mix that makes them so powerful. One of the pet theories among the Grigory is that they're the result of a bug in God's sacred gear program. That your Longinuses are all the product of a series of errors. But I'm rambling. To answer your question, yes, there are other ways to transfer energy as you do. Thanks for the easy-to-follow explanation. Wait, that's not important. They're using Gasper for their attack. The press sidled up to me. To think that they turned Gasper into a weapon, and they activated him from within the school building. Just where did they get that information? And to do something like that during such an important conference? I've never been this insulted in my life. Whoa, Riaz's body is exuding a raging crimson aura. Scary stuff. If you hadn't realized, the forces massed outside the school, fallen angels, and demons, all appear to be frozen too. My word, Riaz Gremory, your familia is far too overpowered. Azizel placed a hand on the Prez's shoulder, only for her to roughly brush it off. His gesture rejected, Azizel sighed before extending a hand towards the window. At his command, countless spears of light appeared outside and rained down on the magicians. The terrorists deployed a defensive barrier, but the luminous shafts tore right through it, obliterating them in a flash. Whoa, awesome. In an instant, the courtyard was filled with corpses. It was an utter carnage. I mean, the governor was seriously strong. What kind of monster was he to wipe them all out in a single blow? It didn't even look like he put any real effort into it. A barrier surrounds the school, and yet they managed to teleport inside. That could only mean someone has opened a magic circle within. One connective to the outside. Anyway, if they increase the Forbidden Valor view's effect, they might even be able to stop one of us. They're trying to keep us pinned down with the onslaught, likely to buy time while they prepare to stop time to destroy this building. They're clearly willing to gamble a huge number of their troops on this. Outside, more magic circles appeared from every direction, each glowing ominously. More magicians almost identical to the group that Azazel had just mowed down poured forth. How are there this many of them? They're just repeating the same old trick. We knock them down and more pop up. They've got some pretty good timing for a bunch of terrorists, to say nothing of their strategy. I wouldn't be surprised if they got someone on the inside. I guess we've been betrayed, eh? Azazel suggested casually. A traitor? Please don't scare me like that, I thought, stunned. Is there any way out of here? Azazel shook his head. We can't run. Not unless we lower the barrier around the school. But if we do, there's no telling of the level of destruction that will cause the human world. I'm gonna wait for their top dog to show his face. If we stay here long, they might wear themselves thin and force his hand. I'd do anything to know who's pulling the strings here. But if we throw caution to the wind, we might be giving them exactly what they want. He seems so relaxed, right? So we just need to bide our time until the real opponent shows up. In other words, we leaders can't move until we make the necessary preparations. Nonetheless, our first objective must be to retrieve Gasper from the old school building, which the terrorists seem to be using as their base of operations. Sir Zack stated. Gasper was back to being our greatest liability. If any of the faction leaders got stopped in time, we might not be able to defend against this attack. Brother, I'll go. Gasper is my servant. He's my responsibility. So I'll be the one to retrieve him. The Prez declared, her eyes unwavering. Sir Zex chuckled. I thought you'd say that. I know you too well. But how will you be able to get close to the building? The schoolyard is overflowing with magicians, and they're blocking us from using any transportation magic of our own. I've been keeping the last rook piece safe in the old school building, in the club room, the Prez replied. I see, Castling. They're no doubt expecting us to retrieve your bishop, but that could catch them by surprise. It may put you a few moves ahead of them. Reyes had told me about this once before. Castling was a technique that allowed the king and rook to swap places at a moment's notice. It was one of those special moves available to pieces of the raiding game. In other words, the Prez can instantly teleport right to the club room. If she jumped there instantaneously, she wouldn't have to go outside. She would be able to penetrate the enemy's defenses and catch them by surprise. We might even force whoever is behind us to show their face. Alright, but it might be dangerous to go alone. Grafia, can you use my power to transfer my sister's castling technique to anyone else? I won't be able to use anything more than a simple ritual here, but it should be possible to send one other person with her. Reyes, who do you want to... Sir Zax, I'll go, I declared, raising my hand. Gasper was my junior. I wanted to help the Prez bring him back. Sir Zax eyed me for a second before shifting to the governor of the fallen angels. Azazel, rumor has it that you've been researching how to freely manipulate sacred gears for a certain length of time, no? Yeah, what of it? I wonder whether you could use that to control the Red Dragon Emperor. Azazel fell silent at the question. Nonetheless, the governor of the fallen angels reached into his pocket and retrieved. Hey, Mr. Red Dragon Emperor, he called out to me. My name's Issei Hyodo. Fine. Issei Hyodo, take this, Azazel said, throwing something my way. I caught them in my hand, a pair of large rings. There were several layers of strange, unfamiliar characters engraved into them. Accessories? Azazel, no doubt recognizing my confusion, explained. Those bracelets have the power to control a sacred gear, at least to a degree. Slap one of them on your half-breed vampire. That will help get his abilities under control. But there are two of them. If one was for Gasper, then the other one... The other's for you. You haven't mastered the power of the Welsh Dragon yet, right? In that case, stick it on. So long as you don't overdo it, you should be able to use your balance breaker without suffering any unpleasant side effects. The bracelet will be consumed instead. Seriously? If I put this accessory on, I can use my balance breaker. However, it will also temporarily break the seal placed over you. You did have one placed over your palm powers, correct? Why does he know that? It was true that Riaz had used all 8 of her palm pieces to recruit me, but as I wasn't strong enough to cope with the level of that power, she had placed a seal over me to keep those abilities in check. This is just speculation on my part, but in terms of distribution of your pieces, I'm guessing Drake needed 7 of them and you 1. No, maybe 7.9 to 0.1. Oh, you'll need to use your promotion ability to harness Drake's true strength. Either way, breaking the seal means unleashing his full potential. Are you okay with that, Riaz Gremory? Azazel asked. The prez merely narrowed her eyes without responding. Use the ring as a last resort. You can't control how much of your strength it uses, so you'll exhaust yourself if you use it before you need to. Your scale mail will drain you extremely quickly. Azazel appended. Right, given that I didn't know what might happen, it was best to be ready to transform at a moment's notice if necessary. Listen up, Azazel continued as if to reinforce his point. You might be a demon, but at your current level, you aren't much better than a human. It doesn't matter how powerful your sacred gear is, if its vessel is so unremarkable. You might be able to wave Drake's powers around against an inexperienced opponent, but against anyone who knows how your abilities work, you're a pushover at best. You are the greatest weakness of your sacred gear. That is the source of your problems. If you don't learn how to get a handle on that power, it will be the death of you. I get it. Yeah, I understood what Azazel was saying painfully well. Still, hearing it aloud stung. I knew that I wasn't the amazing one. That was Drake. Azazel had driven that home in an incredibly easy way to understand. That was the mark of a good teacher, right? Azazel, just how much research have you done on sacred gears? Michael said with a sigh. The governor flashed the Archangel a dauntless grin. Do you have any problem with my hobbies? It isn't like God's still here to explain anything to us. It's best that we have someone who knows what they're talking about, no? Rumor has it there are things that you don't know too. The problem is that you're the one that's studying them. As the two of them bickered with each other, I quietly rejoiced over the bracelets. With this, I can help the prez. Griffey had placed her fingers on Riaz's forehead, transmitting the knowledge on how to use the necessary special ritual. This will only take a moment, Lady Riaz. Please be quick, Grafia. As we got ready to go, Azazel and the White Dragon Emperor were discussing something. Vali. What, Azazel? Go outside and draw the enemy's attention. We might be able to disrupt their strategy if the White Dragon Emperor enters the fray. Perhaps even draw them out. Surely they already know I'm here. Even so, they doubtlessly aren't expecting the Red Dragon Emperor to use a castling move to slip behind their lines. At the very least, you should be able to distract them. Wouldn't it be faster to obliterate the old school building while the terrorist and that half-breed vampire who caused all this are still inside? Vali inquired as though it was painfully obvious. How can that bastard even suggest something so excessive? Don't. Not when we're trying to secure peace. For now, let's call that our plan B. Keep in mind that saving someone close to the Demon King could prove useful to us in the future. Understood. Vali assented with a drawn-out breath. A pair of wings of light unfolded from his back. Gah, are those his sacred gear? Balance break. Vanishing Dragon, balance breaker. A voice cried out. Not a moment later, Vali's whole body was enveloped in a brilliant white aura. When the glow subsided, he was encased in a full-body set of white armor, a mask closing around his head with a click. So this is his balance breaker. He activated it so easily. Why can't I? Whenever I used my balance breaker, I had to offer Drake something of my own in return. Vali glanced my way, then opened the window of the meeting room and leaped outside. No sooner had he done that than there was a blast of air. When I glanced across the schoolyard, I saw the armor of the White Dragon Emperor had tramped down a swarm of magicians. Vali plunged straight at the enemy's forces like a one-man army. He was strong, incredibly strong. Even I could see that. He all but danced through the air, paying no heed to the projectiles that the magicians were firing at him in a massive wave that coursed throughout the school grounds. Unable to do anything to stop him, the magicians fell one after another. However, it wasn't long until a new wave of magic circles formed, summoning up reinforcements. Seriously, there was no end in sight.
Azazel, I'd like to pick up what you said a moment ago,
Sir Zack stated. Yeah, what?
What are you trying to accomplish, gathering so many sacred gears? You've been recruiting Longinus users too, I heard. What need is there for god-killing weapons when there is no god?
Azazel shook his head at this question.
I'm getting ready.
That has an ominous ring to it, especially given that you claim to disavow war, Michael remarked.
It is the honest truth that I seek no conflict with either of you. No, I'm not about to start anything. But we fallen angels have to be able to defend ourselves. Not that I'm expecting either of you to attack us.
Then who? Michael pressed.
The Chaos Brigade. The Chaos Brigade?
Sir Zax raised an eyebrow. It looked like he was unfamiliar with the name as I was.
I've only heard their name and background recently, but their suspicious activities caught the attention of my lieutenant governor a while back. They're apparently gathering a whole army of dangerous members from the three main factions. Some of them are even armed with sacred gears capable of going into balance breaker mode. I've even identified a few who had Longinuses.
And their goal? Michael asked.
Destruction and disarray. Simple, right? They despise peace above all else. They're terrorists. The most extreme kind of evil.
So are they the ones responsible for this attack? I wondered.
They've got a dragon leading them. One mightier and more vicious than the Welsh dragon Vanishing Dragon.
The room fell into mute shock at the revelation. Huh? Seriously?
I see. So he's finally making a move. The Ouroboros dragon. Ophis. The infinite dragon god. Even God himself feared that one. And for good reason. The being who has reigned supreme since the beginning of the world.
Sir Sex murmured, his expression grim. Who? I thought. Everyone's faces looked hopeless. Were they really that terrible? And what was so special about this Ouroboros, whatever their name was? Were they the one that Vali said was the strongest? As I stared at everyone's unsettled reactions, an unfamiliar voice echoed in my ears. Yes, Ophis is the leader of the Chaos Brigade. Uh-huh. Before I even had a chance to realize what was happening, a magic circle formed in the conference room floor. Another demon? I had never seen the design of that ray before. Admittedly, I didn't know a whole lot about demon society, but still.
I see. So he's made his move. The puppet master behind all this.
Sir Zax clicked his tongue in frustration. I feel like I'm the only one out of the loop here.
Graphia, send Rias and Issa on their way.
Understood. Graphia urged the present me into the corner and conjured a small magic circle just large enough for 2 people. Good luck, Lady Riaz. Wait, Graphia? Brother? Riaz's protest fell on deaf ears, and the 2 of us were enveloped in a burst of light. As soon as the president and Issei disappeared into the magic circle, I, Yuto Kiba, witnessed an unbelievable development. The array that had appeared in the center of the conference room took even the 3 factions' leaders by surprise. More specifically, Azazel was laughing, while Sir Zax looked as if he had been bitten down on something rotten.
That's Leviathan's insignia,
the Demon King murmured. What? I couldn't believe my ears. At the very least, the circle wasn't Seraphal Leviathan's. Then whose was it? I wondered. I've seen this in the Vatican Library. It's the insignia of the original Leviathan, Zenobia whispered, pointing at the magic circle. So the rumors were true. She really did survive. A woman, garbed in a dress complete with a revealing neckline and a deep slit down its side, emerged from the magic circle. Greetings, Lord Sir Zex, present Demon King, she greeted boldly.
You're a descendant of the original Leviathan. Katarot Leviathan. What is the meaning of this?
I knew it. Her forebearer is one of the original Demon Kings. Everyone had heard the story. When the original 4 Demon Kings had been destroyed, it became necessary to elect new generations to succeed them. However, the offspring of the vanquished leaders had pushed to continue the war to the bitter end. The pro-peace forces, realizing that their fighting potential was all but exhausted, had used the last of their powers to drive those hardliner holdouts and the remaining followers to a lonely corner of the underworld. Shortly after that, a new system of governance had been established, and it had taken form in the present 4 great Demon Kings. Most of us loyal to the old ways have decided to join forces with the Chaos Brigade, declared Katarot Leviathan. Her words had been conceding, as though she was trying to pick a fight. How could they? So, they've come here to... So basically, a feud between demons had ballooned into an all-out battle. Seems like everyone's dealing with rebels these days. Azazel scoffed, as if he had nothing at all to do with them.
Katara, am I to interpret the words literally?
Of course, Sir Zex. This is us taking the fight to you.
So it's a coup d'etat.
It certainly looked that way. A rebellion led by the descendants of the old regime, rising up against the present leaders. Declaring hostilities at such a critical moment was terrifying enough, but the Leviathan's direct descendant had joined forces with a terrorist group was almost unthinkable.
Why, Katara?
Sir Zex, we've arrived at the opposite conclusion to your so-called leader summit today. In our view, if God and the previous Demon Kings are dead, then it's time for this world to similarly make a break with the past. They had embarked on this rebellious in full knowledge of God's death and the intentions of the 3 major powers to make peace. Don't tell me that monster Ophis saw that far into the future. I find that hard to believe, even for one such as them. Katarot let out a long sigh at Azazel's question. Ophis serves merely as a symbol of our strength, a beacon to gather our forces. With their power, we will destroy the world and remake it anew, and we will be the ones to rule it. Such an extreme endgame almost felt absurd. The magicians causing havoc outside must have been supporting Katarot's cause too. If Azazel was telling the truth, her supporters consisted of demons who had believed the old regime and rebellious angels and fallen angels. Do they really hate the prospect of peace that much? Sir Zex flashed Katarot a sardonic smile.
So, you're building an army out of rebellious angels, fallen angels, and demons, and expect to use that to conquer the new world. And the Ouroboros Ophis is the one to unite you all. The most powerful of dragons, feared by even God himself. According to the legend, they were stronger than both the Welsh dragon and the Vanishing Dragon, a deity-like entity possessed of unlimited power.
Katarot, why are you doing this?
Seraphal pleaded. Katarot fixed her with a hateful glare.
Seraphal, how dare you? You robbed me of my birthright. Speak to me. I am the true heir to the Leviathan name. I am the Leviathan's blood. I am the one who deserved to be crowned Demon King. Katarot, You needn't fret, Seraphal. I'm going to kill you right here and take the Demon King Leviathan title for myself. Ophis will become the new god of our new world, and we will design a new system, new laws, and a new ideal. Michael, Azazel, Sir Zex, your time is at an end.
Sir Zex, Seraphal, and Michael's expressions all clouded at this declaration. Azazel, however, found it quite amusing. His face contorted into a wicked grin.
Bah! What's so funny, Azazel?
Katarot demanded, furious. You and all your followers honestly believe that you can change the world?
Of course. It is the noblest thing to do, Azazel. This planet
is corrupt, filled with idiot humans, decaying. Open your eyes. I say we're doing pretty well, flourishing even. The fallen angel couldn't contain his mirth. Katsura's brow furrowed. I see the years done little to change you, Azazel. You possess so much power, and yet you're satisfied with this imperfect world? Look, I'm not going to come out and say it. What you think that you're trying to do is pretty much beyond cliche at this point. Why is it always people like you that build up your strength? Talk about pain in the ass. Spawn of Leviathan. Even you realize you're talking like a manga villain that's about to get axed, right? Enough with your taunts. Katsura dismissed and sensed. She began to burn with an aura of powerful magic as she floated up into the air. Sir Zax, Michael, I'll take care of this. Don't butt in. Got it. But Azazel rose to his feet and began to emit a dim aura of his own, filled with a fighting fervor. I don't suppose you have any intentions of surrendering, Katsura? Sir Zax asked, giving her one last chance. She shook her head. Not at all, Sir Zax. You are a good Demon King, but not the best. That's why we need to replace you. I see. I'm sorry to hear that. That being all the confirmation Azazel needed, he pointed his hand to the window. The whole area exploded outward in a brilliant burst of light. What an attack! Azazel unfolded his 12 wings, their feathers blacker than night. A spawn of the former Demon King Leviathan, beast of the apocalypse. Not a bad opponent. Katsura Leviathan. How about we have ourselves a little mock Armageddon? Katsura met Azazel's challenge with a sneer. My thoughts exactly, Governor. The two of them launched themselves out of the room with an explosive force, soaring up into the distant sky above the school grounds. They were both making full use of the tremendous power. I wasn't even close to being in the same league. It was my job to offer support in situations like this, but what was I supposed to do? Should I protect the Demon King? Or go after the president? While I was lost in thought, Sir Zex turned to me. You told Kiba. Michael and I will continue to strengthen the barrier that protects the school. With Azazel and Katsura rampaging out there, the damage could be quite extreme. We want to refrain from disturbing the outside world as much as possible. I'm sorry to ask you this, but can you take care of the magicians outside until Grafia finishes analyzing their magic teleportation circles? Defeat the magicians. Those were our orders. A direct command from the Demon King, no less. This was the height of honor. Yes, sir. Thank you. My sister is lucky to have you as her knight. Wield that balance breaker for her and your friends. I will. Zenobia, let's go. Yeah, I'm Ria's Gremory's knight too. 2 blades are better than 1, right? Let's do this. The two of us exchanged nods before dashing into the schoolyard, swords at the ready. My holy demon sword slashed clean through the magician's defensive barrier, felling one more opponent. How many does this make? I had already taken down a good number of them, but there was always another would-be assassin appearing from a magic circle. There's no end to this. Waves of energy sped forth with each slash of Zenovia's Durandal, gouging large swaths through the schoolyard left and right. The strokes of her blade sent enemies flying. Zenovia, please be more careful around the school buildings. Is the Durandal that hard to control? A deafening roar and a blinding burst of light filled the sky. I glanced up and saw Azazel and Katsura Leviathan were still engaging in a fierce duel. Azazel was sending volleys of spears of light, each longer than he was tall, hurling towards Katsura. She, meanwhile, activated several layers of defensive barriers, blocking his attacks. Their back and forth have ravaged the school grounds. If Sir Zex and the others hadn't been defending the new school building, it doubtlessly would have been rubble already. We were lucky that such a strong defensive barrier surrounded the academy. Without it, the surrounding homes would have been eradicated. A cold chill ran down my spine every time Azazel or Katsura's superpower attacks made contact with the barrier. It looked like to me that Azazel had the advantage in terms of raw strength, but Katsura was holding her own better than I would have expected. Typically, she would have had a family of servants fighting alongside her.
But she and the followers of the old regime rejected the modern evil pieces system. She probably didn't have a queen to advise her or a knight to guard against enemies. As I watched, she pulled a small vial from her pockets and gulped down its contents. A small black serpent? Immediately, the air shook violently, sending waves of raw energy coursing over Kuo Academy. The power emanating from Katsura's body swelled, producing an eerie, ominous aura. She launched a foreboding mass towards her Saxon Seraphal. Just what was that snake thing that she just imbibed? Azazel hurled another volley of spears of light at Katsura, but she brushed them all aside with an effortless sweep of her arm. This was unbelievable. Azazel, the governor of the fallen angels, was supposed to be one of the most powerful individuals at the conference, possibly even the strongest. And yet, an even more astonishing development soon unfolded before my eyes. In the air, Azazel, still fighting Katsura, was struck down by an unexpected blow from his flank.